Letter 19. A Right Notion of Life. Dear Lady Mary, exciting and momentous events always seem to be happening in Turkey, no matter what the period of history. But little did you realize that you were lucky enough to live there in one of its most famous eras. This period is named after that bright, dagger-petaled flower that grows wild in the forests of Turkey, and which has hence become its unofficial symbol, the tulip. Indeed, the tulip era of Ahmet III is considered one of the most important phases of artistic creation of the entire Ottoman Empire. It was perhaps not as spectacular as the eras fostered by the great court-sponsored art workshops of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, Selim II, and Murat III, but then again, few ages of the world's artistic heritage could compare with those blockbuster years. Ahmet's period was noteworthy more for its frivolity than for its groundbreaking cultural advances. Tulip time was a fun time. After more than 4 centuries of war, conquest, and defeat, the Ottomans suddenly decided to take a break and enjoy a period of pure pleasure. And the tulip era of Ahmet III thus became a time of peace, lavish entertainment, and literary creativity. This period started the month you left Turkey, stimulated by the signing of the Treaty of Passarowitz in July 1718, which concluded the war with Austria, whose end your husband tried so hard, albeit unsuccessfully, to negotiate. It would appear that the tulip reigned more powerfully than the Sultan during this period of about 12 years. This turban-headed flower became the symbol of the sensuality of the creative arts, and a notion of carefree, joyful life raised to a level of art. There were music festivals, great parades in the hippodrome, dances, outdoor excursions, pleasure gardens, and trips down the blissful Bosphorus. Not only were tulips planted in every garden all over the city, but they also sprang to life on embroideries, ceramics, and miniatures. Besides the appearance of tulips in gardens and artwork, the tulip age pioneered new direction and dimensions to the Ottoman society. It was the period in which relations with Europe intensified. Impetus was conferred to science and intellectual exploration with the creation of libraries, the commissioning of translations, and the arrival of the first printing press for the publication of books into Turkish. Ibrahim Pasha, Ahmed III's son-in-law and Grand Vizier, became a very influential person in the empire, for he sent a diplomatic and cultural mission to France to observe their modes of civilization, art, education, engineering, and technology. This mission led to a vibrant exchange of goods between Europe and the Ottoman Empire, such as fashions, porcelain, and clocks, as well as the introduction of novel ideas, just as is happening once again in today's Turkey. Ahmet III was a big builder as well, accenting the city with his magnificent fountain outside the entrance to the Topkapı Palace in 1728. What a shame you left before it was built and were never able to see it, Lady Mary. I think of you every time I pass in front of it. He also built a spectacular fountain on the quay at Üsküdar. Ibrahim Pasha, named Grand Vizier the month after you left, used his power to build 2 fountains in Şehzadebaşı and Ortaköy. Once again, all were unfortunately built after your departure. You were, however, witness to the building boom of Bosphorus waterside wooden palaces, known as Yala, which began at this time. You wrote to the AHBÂR-I that nothing can be pleasanter than the canal, and the Turks are so well acquainted with its beauties. All their pleasure seats are built on its banks. There are near one another some hundreds of magnificent palaces. Soon after you left, in 1721, Ahmet III built his famous pleasure palace, the Sadabad, or Abode of Felicity, in the Kağıthane meadows near Eyüp. The river stream was diverted to fill the marble canals, copied from the engravings of Versailles, brought back to him from that cultural mission to France. The spirit of this entire era was captured in the famous paintings by the court artist Levny of the circumcision celebrations of Ahmet's sons, and in the verses of the poet Nadim. Let us have fun, let us all dance and play, for it is tulip time. But alas, this period of insouciance and indulgence, of too many parties and prancing, and not enough bread and salt, led to an uprising by the common people, and your Sultan Ahmet III was toppled, bringing the tulip age to an abrupt end in 1730. Even though you did not witness the heyday of the tulip era, you certainly did observe firsthand how much the Turks instinctively incorporate a hefty dose of pleasure into their lives. For I can tell you that it was not just in your day that Turks had fun, danced, and played. They do it every day, and in every way. Turks live for what I call the 4 F's: family, friends, food, and fine settings, in any combination or arrangement. They have perfected the skill of having a good time to a high art. They even have a word for this semi-official national sport of achieving a state of bliss: kayif. Despite all of the problems and difficulties they face in their daily lives, and a fascination with the tragic, Turks manage to maintain an outlook of constant cheer and high spirits. This is a culture where a positive attitude triumphs over suffering and negativity. It is hard not to have a good time when you are in the midst of Turks, whether it be drinking tea, barbecuing lamb chops, flirting, sniffing roses, listening to a saz player, or dancing in a seaside discotheque or at a village wedding. You smile more when you are with a Turk. You laugh more. You have downright fun. As you state to the AHBÂR-I, thus you see, sir, these people are not as unpolished as we represent them. 'Tis true their magnificence is of a different taste than ours, and perhaps of a better. I am almost of the opinion that they have a right notion of life, while they consume it in music, gardens, wine, and delicate eating. We are tormenting our brains with some scheme of politics, or studying some science to which we can never attain, or if we do, cannot persuade people to set that value upon it we do ourselves. I allow you to laugh at me for the sensual declaration that I had rather be a rich effendi with all his ignorance than Sir Isaac Newton with all his knowledge. This right notion of life starts with the mundane, everyday tasks of life, which are somehow elevated to a degree above the routine. Whether it is a simple kindness, a word, or a gesture of sweetness, no aspect of life is considered too humdrum to deny enhancement. Street life and marketplaces offer a full array of merriment and surprises at every turn, all destined to tempt your senses. They can take form, for example, in the extravagant displays of foodstuffs in the marketplaces, where a simple vegetable vendor becomes a visual performance artist, deploying a great sensitivity to shapes and colors as he stacks his goods, pulling a rabbit out of his hat at the end of his performance by cutting up a juicy fleshed fruit and putting it on top of his elaborately constructed pyramid. Jewelry dealers pay just as much attention to their wares, stringing along rows and rows of bangle bracelets of different tones of golds, all radiating their heat under the bright lights, like dancing sunflowers in the Anatolian sun. In the makeshift shops and stands in the bazaar or on the street, the same attention is shown to the display of merchandise, no matter how plain the product. A mere layout of screwdrivers becomes a Jackson Pollock explosion of shape and color. The wide and weird array of merchandise becomes a circus sideshow with hats, gloves, fans, vegetable peelers, underwear, lighters, old picture postcards of flowers, locks, nail polish, imitation perfumes, pink plastic pans, kettles, bright yellow and pink blocks of soap, underwear, fake designer shoes and handbags, brooms and dustpans, all laid out with meticulous attention and joining together in a riotous parade of colors. Not to be forgotten in all of this are the street urchins, or down-and-outers, who sell their individual Kleenex packs, pairs of socks, or single cigarettes with the flourish and flair of a Parisian department store clerk. Deeds above the mundane include attentive gestures, as the bootblack who whisks out a white cloth like a magician on stage to cover your socks to protect them from the polish. It can be the scaffolding of colored towels drying outside barber shops, fluttering in the breeze like dress burgees on a ship. It is seen in the consideration paid to the wrapping of packages in paper or string, no matter how expensive the goods, from feminine needs to alcohol to diapers, just to ensure a bit of discretion between you and the eyes on the street. It is the sweet lemon cologne sprinkled in your hands when you arrive in an office, or when you leave a restaurant. Their manner of doing business is courteous and dignified. The simple pleasure of buying something becomes an adventure, a way to get to know people, to share and to learn. When you enter into negotiations to purchase an item, glasses of tea appear, signaling that not only will business be done, but a relationship will be formed. Shops are never locked, and if the shopkeeper does go out to grab a bite to eat, he puts a chair in the entryway to signal that he is gone, and no one would think of breaching the threshold until it is removed. And although it becomes oppressive at times, the omnipresent music blasting from shops is a way of adding optimistic vitality to the streetscape. Hotel life is much the same, with no area too small to miss an opportunity to make a fuss or to shower attention. Touches of sweetness are everywhere, the bows and scrapes accorded as if you were a United Nations diplomat passing, doors held open with a smile and a wink, sliced carrot coins placed atop the feta cheese slices that peer up at you like little smiley faces to greet your morning with cheer, and the plastic rose tucked into the lapel of your terry bathrobe to make you feel like you have a secret admirer. Another refinement that appears on the street is the art of prominence of sight. The Turks site their homes, mosques, and monuments with exacting science, and have an instinctive sense about how to best position their monuments for dramatic and strategic effect. In the solitude at the mosques of Murad I or Yildirim Bayezid atop their Ares in Bursa, the wind in the trees plays an eternal hymn to the tragic destiny of these two sultans. Unforgettable as well are the Ottoman homes scrambling up the hill at Safranbolu, like chessboard pieces set in harmony so as to preserve the view of their neighbors. One of the most joyous refinements of the Turks, in my eyes, is their love of eating outside. It can be a fancy restaurant rooftop terrace, a tea garden in a park in the center of town, an impromptu picnic near a fountain, or a fast-running stream, an alfresco supper on an apartment porch, or a stop alongside the road under a huge tree to eat a peach. These people know that fresh air enhances the flavor of food like a fine wine. I grew up with much of the same love of eating outside, with my father organizing picnics in the middle of winter snowfalls, cookout breakfasts in parks, excursions with salt shaker in hand to tomato fields in bloom, and festive picnics with the family in forest glens. For this reason, I always associate eating outside with spontaneity, joy, and fraternity. And so, when I discovered this people who so enjoy eating food al fresco, I felt right at home. Turks have a love of summer picnics in orchards, in gardens, in national parks, in their beloved high meadows, yalya, under trees, and in any spot of natural beauty. Their repasts can be very leisurely and simple, with fresh fruit, honey, and bread, or the more elaborate barbecue of grilled meat. An amusing custom is the eat it as you cook it yourself that is found in many restaurants and roadside stops, where a portable grill is brought to your table, leaving you in charge of grilling your meat or fish just to your taste. As much as they love eating outdoors, Turks do not favor sidewalk cafes, as they find the city street to be too unclean. In a letter to Alexander Pope from Edirne, you speak of this love of gardens of tall cypress trees filled with turtle doves. The whole ground is laid out in gardens, and the banks of rivers set with rows of fruit trees, under which all the most considerable Turks divert themselves every evening, not with walking, that is not one of their pleasures, but a set party of them choose out a green spot where the shade is very thick, and there they spread a carpet on which they sit, drinking their coffee. And in no better place does the consummation of music, gardens, wine, and delicate eating you mention take place than in the Yalas, the summer mountain plateaus that are veritable national shrines to the Turks. These highland pastures are the Elysian fields of the collective subconscious of the Turks, who design their carpets to resemble the many colors of their flower-bespangled meadows. The tradition of transhumans is in the blood of these descendants of the Central Asian Turkomen, who came to Anatolia starting in the 11th century. Their survival depended on the constant search for fresh pastures for their goats and sheep, according to the season of the year. Although this traditional way of life is no longer practiced for the majority of Turks, it still lives on in their souls. With every spring, the hearts of Turks turn to the cool beauty of these mountain pastures, and they head to the hills to enjoy relaxation and community with nature. Their gushing streams, white afternoon mists, and bleating sheep become some of the most famous heroes that shine in their folk ballads. Turkish children run free in the grass, climb trees and rocks, and families gather at night in the small huts that are constructed as summertime shelters. The foods they eat here are as fresh as the air of the warm days and cool nights. Butter, cheese, milk, bread, and yogurt. Whether the Yalas are located in the Black Sea region, in the Taurus or Kachkar Mountains, or on the skirt of Mount Erciyes, is not important. What is important is to feel free, to share food with family, to live nature in harmony with the seasons, to live a sense of adventure, and above all, to be liberated from time. Although you did not get to enjoy a visit to a Yala, you did savor the intoxication of Turkish weather and nature. The climate is delightful in the extremest degree. I am now sitting, this present 4th of January, with the windows open, enjoying the warm shine of the sun, and my chamber is set out with carnations, roses, and jonquils from my garden. It would be so enjoyable to sit down with you, Lady Mary, on a spread carpet in the waterfront garden of one of those hundreds of magnificent palaces, or on a Yala, to partake of some chosen conversation with one esteemed, to recite aloud some of those verses your tutor Ahmed taught you, and to eat fresh peaches and drink tea together. We could laugh and enjoy high-spirited merriment, just like the Turks do every moment of their day. We would put Sir Isaac Newton and his laws of motion aside, and we would have fun, dance, and play, just like Nadim. We could become friends in the way that friendship often so sweetly and gently unfolds in such instances in Turkey. That is refinement indeed, and the right notion of life. Sincerely, Kadria Branning.